Picture this, you're declared unclean and forced into isolation for 7 days. No temple, no community, just you and time to think. Sounds like punishment, right? Actually, it was restoration therapy. Today we're exploring how ancient timeout rituals in Leviticus 15 created sacred pauses for spiritual healing. You'll discover why isolation wasn't punishment but preparation, how reflection became restoration, and what these holy timeouts teach us about genuine healing. Let me bring in someone who's spent years studying these ancient practices.
So here's what's fascinating about Leviticus 15. It's not actually about punishment at all. According to Bible Hub's analysis, periods of uncleanness required rest and reflection. The page content indicates this teaches us the value of taking time to pause and reflect on our lives.
Wait, so when someone had a bodily discharge and was declared unclean, that wasn't God being harsh?
Not at all. David Guzik's study guide explains that the status of unclean didn't completely take someone out of the community. It placed restrictions on them and required ceremonial purification when the condition was gone.
Interesting. So it was more like a spiritual timeout than exile.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The page content from Dr. Constable's notes shows that someone with these discharges could live at home. They didn't need to move outside the camp. They just had to wash and wait until evening.
But what about the more serious cases, like the 7-day periods we mentioned?
Those are where the real restoration happens. According to the page content, when a woman had her menstrual cycle, she was unclean for 7 days. But look at what Bible Hub says. This period of separation allowed rest, protection, and symbolic distinction.
Rest and protection? That sounds almost caring?
It absolutely was. The page content from Bible Ask explains that these laws had clear hygienic benefits and gave women a period of physical rest and privacy during a time that could be painful and exhausting.
So there were practical benefits, but you're saying there was something deeper happening spiritually?
Absolutely. The page content emphasizes that ritual impurity was a temporary state that restricted someone from entering sacred spaces until purification took place. It was about separating the sacred from the common.
And during that separation, what was supposed to happen?
Reflection and spiritual realignment. Bible Hub's analysis points to Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. In our fast-paced world, taking time to rest and reflect can help us realign our priorities with God's will.
That's such a different way to think about it. But why 7 days specifically? That number keeps coming up.
Great question. The page content from Biblical Theology explains that in biblical numerology, the number 7 often represents completion or perfection. By waiting for 7 days, people were acknowledging the completeness and sanctity of life.
So it wasn't arbitrary, there was symbolic meaning built into the waiting period itself.
Exactly. And the page content from Bible Art's devotional on Leviticus 13:5 says the 7th day indicates a period of waiting that's laden with tension, but also represents completion and rest, the Sabbath principle.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. These weren't just health regulations, they were spiritual technologies.
That's a perfect way to put it. The page content shows that periods of waiting and purification in biblical tradition often symbolize spiritual preparation, transformation, and divine intervention.
And this connects to restoration how?
Here's where it gets really profound. The page content from Bible Inspire explains that the Hebrew word shub means to turn back or return. 53 times in the Old Testament, this word describes God restoring people to himself.
So restoration isn't about getting your stuff back, it's about getting back to God?
Exactly. The page content emphasizes that Old Testament restoration centers on relationship. God's people had turned away from him, and restoration meant God calling them back, bringing them home.
That completely reframes these timeout periods. They're not about punishment, they're about creating space for that return.
Right. And the page content shows that community played a role in maintaining purity. This highlights the importance of accountability within faith communities, people helping each other stay on track.
So even the isolation wasn't complete isolation. There was still community support?
The page content indicates that the community was involved in the restoration process. It wasn't abandonment, it was structured support for healing and return.
This is fascinating, but I have to ask, what about the gender dynamics? Were women being singled out unfairly?
Actually, the page content shows that Leviticus 15 addresses bodily discharges for both men and women. David Guzik's study explains that men with abnormal discharges faced similar restrictions and purification requirements.
So it was equal opportunity timeout?
In a sense, yes. And the page content from Bible Ask notes that many surrounding cultures held extreme and harmful beliefs about menstruation, but Israel's laws were actually protective compared to pagan practices.
That's a really important context. These laws were progressive for their time.
And here's something else interesting. The page content explains that blood symbolizes the moral order in terms of purity and pollution. Context is everything in determining its significance.
So blood isn't inherently good or bad, it depends on the situation?
Exactly. K.C. Hansen's research in the page content shows that blood can be either in place or out of place, pure or defiled. It's about order and proper boundaries.
This is making me think about modern applications. Do we have anything like these sacred pauses today?
Well, the page content suggests that the underlying principles are still meaningful. We're called to recognize the sanctity of life and approach God with wholehearted devotion.
But we've lost the structured aspect, haven't we? The mandatory reflection time?
That's a great observation. The page content from Bible Art's devotional emphasizes that sometimes the answer is not to move forward, but to stay put and await God's revelation. We need those pauses.
It's like we've optimized out the waiting, but maybe the waiting was the point.
Exactly. The page content says that stagnation doesn't always imply failure. Often it's an opportunity for deeper reflection and growth. The shutting up for 7 days was an act of mercy.
An act of mercy. That's such a different way to frame mandatory waiting.
And the page content shows this pattern throughout Scripture. Noah's 40 days, Moses on Mount Sinai for 40 days, the Israelites' 40 years in the wilderness. These weren't punishments, but preparation periods.
The number 40 keeps showing up too. Is that significant?
According to the page content, periods of waiting and purification often involve the number 40, symbolizing a time of testing, trial, and preparation. They're deeply connected to spiritual growth and readiness.
So whether it's 7 days or 40 days, the principle is the same. Sacred time for transformation.
Right. And the page content emphasizes that these periods serve to cleanse individuals or communities, preparing them for a new phase in their spiritual journey.
This connects to something else I've been thinking about. The page content mentions water as a symbol of purification and renewal. How does that fit?
Great connection. Bible Hub's analysis shows that water is a recurring symbol in Leviticus 15, representing purification and renewal. This symbolism carries into the New Testament, where Jesus offers living water.
So the physical washing was pointing to something deeper, spiritual cleansing?
Exactly. The page content quotes John 7:38, "Whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them." The external ritual pointed to internal transformation.
It's like the whole system was designed to teach people about spiritual realities through physical experiences.
That's exactly right. The page content explains that the aim was to teach reverence for God's holiness and to separate the sacred from the common. Every detail had meaning.
And the restoration aspect, that wasn't automatic, was it? There was a process?
Right. The page content shows that restoration required specific rituals and often sacrifices. For men with discharges, they needed to offer 2 inexpensive sacrifices when the condition was gone.
So there was acknowledgement, process, and then celebration of return?
Exactly. And the page content emphasizes that this restoration begins within. He restores my soul, from Psalm 23:3. God's restoration starts in the hidden places, renewing our mind, will, and emotions.
So when you step back from all this, what we're really talking about is a sophisticated system for spiritual health and community restoration.
That's exactly right. The page content shows that these weren't arbitrary rules, but a comprehensive approach to maintaining both individual and community holiness through structured reflection and restoration.
And the genius was making the waiting mandatory. You couldn't rush back to normal. You had to sit with the experience.
Right. The page content from the devotional emphasizes that adequate time for healing and observation was essential. Sometimes afflictions don't immediately respond to our longing for restoration.
Here's what this really comes down to. We've lost the art of sacred pausing. We want instant restoration, but maybe the timeout is where the real healing happens.
Absolutely. The page content shows that true restoration isn't about getting your old life back, but about returning to relationship with God. It's relational, not material recovery.
And that requires time, reflection, and often community support to process what's really happening in our hearts.
Exactly. The page content emphasizes that restoration focuses primarily on spiritual alignment with God, then extends to healing wounds and renewing strength. The relationship comes first.
So the next time life forces us into an unexpected pause, illness, loss, transition, maybe we can see it differently. Not as punishment, but as sacred time out.
That's beautiful. The page content reminds us that God exists outside of time yet moves within it. Even years lost to pain or failure are redeemable when we use them for reflection and return.
Thanks for joining us on Copilot Podcasts. Remember, the next time you're forced to slow down, you're not being sidelined. You might just be getting the sacred pause you didn't know you needed.